Right, this is what I bought. I don't know anything about it other than apparently it doesn't work. I assume that this is the bit that carries the cutting chain, and then this appears to be a chain, so that presumably goes on there. Those bits don't really matter, obviously, because if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This battery will be well underpowered for running a chainsaw, but at least it will show us that it's either is working or isn't working or whatever. So we pull that back. Nothing. Dead as a doornail. But clearly it's not doing anything, so... T25. I guess, well, I'm not even sure what you need to take off, but I think we'll probably have to start with this handle. 1, 2, 3, there's one in there, 4. So what does that mean? Does that, so we can lift that up, can we? Oh, there it goes. Right, so that's that piece on. Right, so what are we confronted with next? Right, we've got this. So it looks like that would need to come off before you got any further. So, oh, and that's a different one. It's got like a shoulder on it. What about this side? Yeah. Oh, it's a nut and bolt this side. That's interesting. So that's completely different. What about the rest of this handle? Does this come off? So that's the other part of the handle off. I think we've got to get this off before we can take the side plate off, and presumably the side plate will cover up this, which is the motor, I'm guessing. I'm assuming a lump here is the motor. So let's have a look. Do we have to take this off? Looks like it's 8. Is it tight? No, it's not particularly tight. So. Well, that's up in the air a little bit. Let's see if we can pop that forward. We can. Nearly. Why do you not want to come off? Oh, there it goes. Well, I don't know if that's what I was supposed to do, but that's off. So do we need that off to lift this off? Wouldn't surprise me if we do, so maybe we'll take that little clip off. It's a strange clip because it's not a complete clip, it's like got a piece missing, and I don't know if that means that it's a broken clip or it was always that shape. I've not seen one like that before. Oh no, once you moved it, it's a complete clip. So maybe we didn't need to take that off after all. I just don't know. Right, well, we'll go to this side now. And we have got a lot of screws. Right, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we need a bit more oomph. Let's try going up. Just one for now, see what happens. Oh, I've lost track now. Was that 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 6. 7. 8. 9. So this should split. And it does. So there we go, so we can lift that off. mean, all in all, it's not that full of mess and muck, is it? I mean, a little bit dirty, but not the end of the world. Right, put that over there. So what have we got? We've got a switch. So there's the lock for our switch. So that's dead simple. So that obviously slides across, release, either blocks this or doesn't block it. So we'll get that out of the way for a minute. Right, and then that goes down, and that's what's operating our switch. So the obvious thing to check, given past experience, is the continuity at the switch. So we'll stick that on there. That's going down more or less to 0. Put one probe on each wire of the switch. Obviously that should be open circuit, give or take. It might not be because we don't know what's at the other end. But, oh sorry, I've put that around the wrong way. It goes to 0, so the switch it's doing its job because we're getting 0 continuity, so the switch is definitely closed. So the switch is doing its job, so we can take that out of the way. That can go in and be cleaned when it needs to be cleaned. We've got a whacking great heatsink here, so presumably this has got all sorts of gubbins attached to it. Oh, it has, and it's all potted. Then we've got a whole load of wires coming round here. We've got this, which we don't really care about, and so I'm guessing that this is the only bit we do care about, and that, which I took this piece off from, doesn't matter because that looks like it's a gearbox. So how do you get that motor off? And the answer to that would seem to be I haven't got a clue, because it looks like it comes off of the gearbox part only after you've taken the motor off, but there's no obvious way of getting the motor off. You'll have to take my word for it. I just tapped it with a drift in my hand, not even hitting it with anything hard, and that has gone through, and this is still solid on here, so I don't really understand what's happened there. So there's obviously more to this than meets the eye, because this has come away like that. That'd be interesting to see. So let's pull all these wires up out of the way, and like I said, this just fell out of somewhere, I don't know where, we'll worry about that later. But if we lift these wires up out of here, right, so that's those out of there. We've still got, this is the little safety switch, so we've still got that to deal with. But if I look at this, look at that. I know I'm at the edge of the shot, but that is moving perfectly freely, so it wouldn't surprise me if that actually works. If I can get that out of the way, let's put that over there for a minute. There's the micro switch, so if I undo that, bit of a crude design. Just, you know, a big flat washer holding it in. It's the same with this thing. It is. It's a big flat washer holding it in. But there you go. So this is just a simple micro switch. So there it is. Acts as a safety switch. So if that's not pressed in, it won't start. So that's all our electrics out of the way. This is the switch part that should move when the handle moves, that forward handle. We should be able to pull that handle, and that should have moved this over and pressed the safety switch. It's, for some reason, it's gone over into the safety switch position now, I think, but I don't know. I don't really know what's going on there. As this has all got to be cleaned at some point, I think what we'll do is we'll take that bit out. Come on. Oh, here we go. Come on, you can do it. Right, there we go. Not sure what that's holding. That's presumably holding that. It looks like what they've tried to do is use as much plastic as possible and then reinforce it either with extra bits of plastic, which is what this seems to be, or the odd bit of metal. Let's see what this is. Is that the same size? Yep. This is presumably where the blade went on. Oh, We need to remember that. Look, that one's much smaller at the front there. Right, so let's put that in there, and that one sat there, which is a bit of a stupid place for it to be. So that must be so it can slide. Is that something to do with tensioning? It could be, I suppose. Right, so is this where the oil feed comes through? Yes, I think that might be the oil feed. One, got a lot of these. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Doesn't quite want to lift off over there because it's not, something's not in the middle. Ah, there we go. What have we got here? Oh, see, this still won't turn. But is that to do with that? Yeah, I reckon that releases it, doesn't it? That takes the pressure off. That's what's holding that tight. Undo that. There's our bush. So can we take this off now? Yes, we can. And then that still leaves us with this thing. So that's got to come up there. Is that under tension? I think that is, isn't it? Sorry, you missed the spring. It just pops out. You can see it's I don't know, 15 mil, something like that. If it pops out, then that's the spring. Getting it back in is going to be fun. And then I presume that this will lift off. Might not with that. And then we're okay. Right, now this, I'm still confused about this, because obviously this thing is designed to squeeze this as a sort of safety measure and stop it turning, or at least keep it fairly still and keep the blade still so that you're not going to spin the blade up. But I don't know, something about it just doesn't, it just seems bizarre that it, you see the way it doesn't make sense. You'd think it would sit nicely like that, but it, if I release that I can lift this out, and it just seems odd the way that there's nothing up here to support it, only around here, so it can sort of twist. I don't know what's considered a, you know, a reasonable amount of oil on these things, but it seems to me that this, the shavings from the wood wouldn't be quite so much of a problem if it wasn't for the vast amount of oil that's on everything. I would have thought that would lift up. Yeah, so that lifts up like that. I think that's just as there as a support. Let's see if we can just lift that up. Oh, right. They obviously didn't want to use a piece of plastic for that piece, so they put that bit of metal in there. And then we've got this, which is the other end, I think, of where the oil is. But let's try and fathom out what's going on here, because yeah, there's the oil pipe, and it goes across there, comes out there. I don't know if there's a join somewhere, I can't see. Oh, hold on, does it? Oh, it goes into that metal pipe there, that metal part. So we should be able to take that off. What's holding that? Can we push it? Yeah, I can push it from the other side. Just see my finger coming from the other side. Okay, let's get that to come off there. Now what can we do about this? So I don't want to tip it up and end up with oil everywhere, but it's leaking out the lid I think there anyway. Right, now what have we got here? We've got that. It's a job to see how this heats with, oh, that's how it comes through there. Oh, and it looks like this acts as a little pump. But it looks like it's been putting out possibly a little bit too much oil. I mean, I'm no expert on these things, but that seems like an awful lot of oil. But maybe someone will tell me that no, that's not a lot of oil, that's just quite normal. Another rubber grommet, almost exactly the same as the first one, has appeared. And I don't know where that came from either. But we've got two now. Right, these parts have all had a wash with warm soapy water, but I don't know what it is, but something didn't come off with that, so I'm going to give them a quick rub over with some methylated spirits and see what that does, because that seems to work quite well at removing stuff that soapy water doesn't remove. This is the other case half. I've just spent 5 minutes blowing this off with air compressor in my other workshop. You just would not believe the amount of dirt and dust that came out of this motor. I couldn't believe it myself. I mean, you could have planted potatoes in here. And look, it's so free to spin now compared to how it was before. It's just ridiculous. So I think we can probably safely say that this was so clogged up it could barely turn. Now, obviously the brake on the chainsaw itself, that seemed to be sticking as well, which wasn't helping, but this could barely turn at all even when I got it out. And although it did spin when the power was applied to it, I think it was struggling a bit, so it should be working fine now, fingers crossed. So we just need to get it all back together again. Nothing, we've lost power. But that's him properly, isn't it? Damn it. There's a loose connection somewhere. You keep playing around with the wires and this happens. But it sounds terrible. So, not only is there a loose connection, but that sounds terrible. Right, I've taken just the motor out and left the rest behind. I don't know what these two screws do. They look like they might hold the motor to the gearbox, so I'm going to see. Oh, they're tight, I know that. I feel like they might be Loctited in. Oh, that is tight. Let's get a bit of grip. That's it. I hate it when it's like this, because sometimes, I swear, they don't finish off the holes properly and then they just drive the screw in and leave it to cut the last bit of thread, and that's the thread lock. Come out, come on, you're loose. There we go. Perhaps they have got thread lock on them, so that's those two. Perhaps they're just rubbish screws. I certainly wouldn't want to use the cordless screwdriver on them, because I think that would just chew the head off. You can see the slightest little twist and it just comes out, so I can use it almost like an automatic screwdriver. And they feel soft. The actual head feels soft. Right, let's try that one. It just keeps trying to come out. Last one. Oh. There we go. God, that one was tight. And even now, the screwdriver is trying to slip out of the head, so I've got to keep a fair bit of pressure on there. It's ridiculous. But there you go. Right. So that's what? 1, 2, 3, 4. And presumably this lifts off. Try a gentle tap. Oh, that was like a gentle tap. Yep, that's lifting off. Ooh, let's hope nothing flies out. I hate it when you open these things and something flies out. Ooh. That's a strange looking grease. White grease. What's that there? Oh, that's just, oh, it's a mixture of probably grease and aluminium powder, I bet. Obviously that's on there tight because that's on the motor. I mean, that, does that feel rough? I suppose it does feel a little bit rough, but it's, you've got a sort of cogging effect, I would have thought. Looks like there's a bearing in there. I wonder what the chances of getting those out are. Ugh. Right, now I don't know if you can put this together the wrong way around, but I think just for peace of mind I'll put a little dot of red there and a little dot of red there. Hopefully I'll remember that. Crikey, that's tight. Oh, that is really tight. Even though it's turning, it's still really tight. Beginning to lose it off. Right, and then obviously we know that those go in there, so they might as well go in there for now. So we've still got this. Well, it doesn't sound like there's a noisy bearing or anything in it, so it doesn't sound like that was causing the noise. It's a straight cut gear, so obviously going to get a lot of noise from that. But it doesn't look terrible. We've got a bearing there. That can't go, that's held there with the circlip, so that can't go in any further, so I don't think the bearing is giving us too much grief. So where's that horrible noise coming from then? I'll just loosen the screws. Right, that's off. Right, little circlips off, bent as usual, But this is the bit that I can't believe. I tried to pull this off, shine a light in there, and I doubt you'll be able to see it. There's something in there. I don't know what it is, but there is something there. I don't know if it's a Torx bit or a hex bit or maybe nothing. It could just be a hole. But there is something there. There's a little dimple mark there that appears to line up with it. But what on earth is it? Right. T6, too small. T7, too small. T8, too big. Hex 2mm, too big. What is it? Right, I've found something that looks like this is the size. I don't know what size this is, but it seems to be a really good fit, but I can't turn it. Well, obviously I can turn it, but I know what's going to happen. I mean, I think that's in as tight as anything's going to be, and if I try turning that, that is not moving. Battery went flat yesterday, so you missed me getting the almost no grease out of here and wiping the tiny little bit of almost no grease off of here. So you just missed that bit. But you can see almost no grease. I mean, that's the grease that's on the motor shaft, almost nothing. And if I wipe it, I just want to show you this because there's something very weird about this. You can see, maybe not very obvious on the camera, but I just don't think this is grease. I think this is heatsink compound and not grease. The way it smears and has no sort of feel of greasiness to it. I mean, it's slightly greasy, but not in the way that grease is. Anyone who uses this sort of heatsink compound will know what I'm talking about. It feels sort of slimy and as if it's greasy, but it's more a waxy sort of sliminess. But you can see that, and also when it gets on your skin, again, you'll know what I mean if you've used this stuff a lot. The way it sort of moves on your skin and the way it feels, I swear this is not grease. I mean, it could be white grease, it could be, but I have got some white lithium-based grease, and that just behaves like grease and feels like grease and looks like grease. But this, no. And I mean, you can see how little there is. I mean, there's virtually none on here. So this whole drive pinion and the gear that it ran against was basically ungreased. And another thing that's fascinating is that this just pulls out like that. This bearing didn't appear to have any grease of any description inside it. I finally got the motor apart. I had to start at this end, so I used a press to pull that off. There was a circlip on here which I've lost, so worry about that later. That pinged off round the garage somewhere. Big bearing, little bearing at the other end, and this is the bit that would not come off, and I finally got that off with the press. This is so badly made, it is unbelievable. The windings on it are just ridiculous. I mean, I guess as it doesn't spin it's not too bad, but they are so loose and haphazard. Well, you can see there's wires poking out all over the place. I don't think I've ever seen anything as badly as that before. But the biggest thing is I've got to try and clean this up, which is not going to be easy because you can see the magnets are covered in fine metal shavings. Now, and there's a fair bit of wood shavings as well, but the metal shavings in here, that just doesn't make sense. So that I do not understand. It turns out the best way to get iron filings off is with sticky tape. So there you go, they're all cleaned up, and I'm learning a lesson here. I thought this small bearing which sits in there was okay, but in fact if I put this stick through it and then I go like this, obviously you can't feel it or see it, but I can feel it's notchy. It's sort of like going clunk 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 clunk. So that bearing has had it. This one I'm not so sure. It feels perfect, it really does. Right, I can start reassembling this then. So that's the old bearing, and there's a new one. Old bearing at the other end, and there's the new one, and this is a bag of small circlips, because the other one of these I never did find. So I've had to buy a bag of circlips. Well, I have got a press, but I'm hoping that this doesn't require that much effort to get on, so I'm going to push the bearing on. Luckily I can push it with 2 sockets, but in fact I don't need much effort. It's going on really, you can see, look, I mean, you know, no effort at all. And I've marked with a Sharpie roughly where I think I need to go to, because I don't think it needs to go completely all the way on. Now, interestingly enough, the stop point agrees with that hitting the end there. Right, next, this bit needs to go into there, and I don't think it's a tight fit, so I think there's a fair chance that if we just wiggle it enough we might be able to get it to go in. Oh, there we are. So that's in. Right, same method as before. I'm trying to push the bearing on, and the only problem is at this end it's much tighter. But hopefully that is no, I was going to say hopefully that is going on okay, but it isn't. It's trying to push this whole thing. Right, it just took a couple of taps with a hammer to tap that in, so that seems to have gone in okay. I guess that's as far as it goes, because it won't go any further. So now we need to get this back on there, and again I think that should be fairly straightforward. We should be able to do that in here because we're pressing straight on the end of there. That should, with a bit of luck, straighten itself out. Crikey, that is tight. I wonder it took some doing to get it off. Crikey, I might even have to put this back in the press to get it on. That's as far as it wants to go. Oh, that's... yeah, well that would be as far as it wants to go. It's reached the end. Right, with a little bit of luck, that's okay. I can't remember if it was any further on than that. I'll have to look back at the video and see. And if it needs a bit more push, we'll give it a bit more push. Right, next, we need to make this bit, whoa, fit on that bit. As you can see, it is quite keen to go on. But I think it's going to need a bit of a push. I'll take the plastic ring off first. I don't know how well it will show, but I've put a tiny grub screw there. I'm fairly sure there was never a grub screw in this. The hole was there and I was trying to extract a grub screw, but I don't think there was ever a grub screw in there, because now there's one in there, it's absolutely obvious that there's a grub screw in there. So I don't think it was ever there in the first place. So I may just align this as best I can on the shaft, add a little bit of Loctite, use the grub screw to help make sure it is aligned, and then leave the grub screw out. Right, as you can see, I've put the ring of magnets on, and now I've got this bit just pressed on as gently as it will go because I can't do anything press wise, and now I've somehow got to get all that in there and gently press this down, but it's got to align with that because of the shape of it, so I've got to make sure that I don't get it out of alignment. And God, that is tight. I really don't like the way these things are so tight, but I can't do anything about it. They obviously are designed to be very tight. Now what I would like is to be able to see, I've put a little red mark here and a little red mark there to make sure that if I push, I'm not going to go and push this at a funny angle. But it's very difficult because you can see that I need this to come up and sit on there like that. I don't know if you can see that in the picture, but I need it to come back a fraction so that I know that it's going to go on straight. It's only when it's very near the top that how straight it is matters. I'll try and explain that in a moment. If I can get it nearer to the... There it goes. You see, once it gets to there, it has to be either there or 180 degrees facing the other way. There isn't any choice. It has to go there. And with luck, that means that the grub screw inside will line up. So all I now need to do is get this to go on. Which I can't, because I can't turn it. It's so tight. Now, it all depends on how much of a gap there should be when this is assembled. In other words, when that, because you can see that can turn, which it shouldn't. It should be like that. And obviously that gap is way too big, so this needs to close up here. So we need something to press against the end here. Right, hopefully you can see it. I've got an M8 nut jammed in there, so I've got extra 5mm, 6mm of push, and that should, with a bit of luck, get me down to about there. Now that seems reasonable. Look, I've got that sort of gap there. Hopefully I've closed all the gap up underneath. It's very, very difficult to tell. But I'm assuming that that is now all the way on. Right, for any of you wondering, I hadn't completely forgotten about this. I'd hoped that once it more or less went together, everything would line up and this would fit on, but that's not been the case. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get this on or not, because I've had to squash it first from this end, then the other end, and then this end, and then the other end, to try and get to the point where the circlip will fit on this end. But of course then even if the circlip fits on this end, I'm stuck with will it fit on the other end. So I'm not having a good time here. So anyone who's thinking should I take one of these motors apart, the answer is probably no. Barely goes on. Come on, try again. Right, now I can tell looking at that circlip's not all the way on, but although maybe that has gone on. It's such a tight fit, it really is difficult to tell. Now, is this turning yet? Ah, yes. I can feel some resistance, but with luck that's just the resistance of the magnets. Be nice if it was. You didn't warn me, did you? How am I supposed to get that circlip on when this is in the way? It's got to go under there. Like that. Oops. Right, all you wondering if you can get the circlip on with this in place? No, you can't. So, You've got to do it the proper way or you can't do it. It won't go. Alright, push that down to there. That's and hopefully that's on. Just that easy. Let's give that a bit of a squeeze. Hopefully you can't be too tight or too loose. But what I'm going to do is just give this a little tap. Copper hammer. Because now obviously I can't push that in too far. So it will only go as far as the circlip groove will allow. And so hopefully it's sort of semi-relaxed on itself. So hopefully that's as good as it's going to get. It don't actually feel any different to what it did before, but this bearing was definitely no good. Right, all back together again hopefully. These are getting worse and worse and worse. Nothing fits them properly, God knows what they're supposed to be. But as you can see, that all seems to be okay, that's turning fine. So we just need all the electrics here to work properly, and then we should have this bit back in business. Hopefully it won't make such an awful racket as it was making before, but of course it's possible that it'll still be making an awful racket. Right, I've started to reassemble this, but there is a problem somewhere. There's an intermittent electrical fault somewhere. You'll see in a moment. I think I've got it working again. That is it quieter? You tell me. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but every now and again it's as if this seems to run on sort of phase shifting to make the thing shift. So like, you know, produce a magnetic field, produce a magnetic field, produce a magnetic field. And every now and again it sort of goes and doesn't want to go. And I think it's because of these here that trigger it. And at first I thought there was a problem with the main power supply here, but I don't think there is. I think it's these little trigger wires here. I'm assuming they trigger it. They go into the motor over there. But at the moment it's working, but I can put all this back in because it turns over on itself back in there, and it will suddenly stop working again. And it's either here or in these wires here, but I can't actually tell. I've not managed to work out which wire might be the problem. I don't know if I'll put this in the video or not, but that is part of a circlip, and so the circlip I thought I'd lost, obviously I didn't lose. It went round there like that, and what I actually lost was half of it. It snapped, so no wonder I couldn't find it again. I just thought you should see what I'm up against. I've put it back together again, and that's all it will do. But you can bet if I take all these screws out, it will suddenly spring back to life again. Taking all the screws out, watch what happens. Works fine. Put the screws in, doesn't work. Well, the mystery deepens, because watch what happens. Pull this back, pull the trigger. You'd think it was okay, it's all screwed together, it's okay. Turn it on its side, don't bang it, don't jar it, don't do nothing. Oh, just banged it and jarred it, but works once. No, it won't work. Go back. How is that possible? I don't know how well it will show, but to try and stop this module from moving, I've wedged a little piece of rubber there, another little piece there, a little piece here, and a little piece there. There isn't room to put rubber this side, and at the bottom, so I can only hope that that's okay there. This can still move a bit, but it's not too bad. I don't know whether I need to try and wedge that in place or not, but I don't get the impression that the fault is a bad connection here. It's something to do with over here. If you turn all of this on its side, it runs perfectly. It's only, the fault is only present when the cover is on. Right, I've just noticed something which seems too unbelievable for words. I can't tell if it's got anything to do with this. This bar of plastic that runs across here is not straight. I've tried to push it back straight. You can see where I've been pushing on it. But it does not want to sit very straight. It looks like it's been squashed to one side, even right over here. Now, it would seem unlikely that that's got anything to do with anything until you look at this piece. This is the piece that runs right next to it. I'll move you across a fraction. That, presumably, is meant to be a straight line. And the weird part about it is, it's got a great big sort of groove in it, as if it's been hitting against something next to the motor. And it's pushed it over. But when you look, the place where it sits is there, and there is nothing for it to hit. It sits just on top of that. There's nothing that that piece could ever hit down there. So the whole thing is very bizarre, but I'm going to try to straighten this up. Right, I think this is a little bit further than I managed to get before. I've put this side cover on, the handle on, where it bolts on there. That's back on. Seems to be working. What I did was, those pieces of plastic that seem to be interfering with each other on the inside, I cut about 2mm off of one of them and then bolted it together, and that seemed to take the strain off the middle part, and it's... I won't say it's perfect, but it does seem to be working. Right, well, the upper parts I've got are this, which appears to be a chain. Sharp or blunt, I've no idea. And this. And you'll have to excuse my ignorance, but I don't know anything about chainsaws. Presumably that is something to do with how the whole thing works. Oh, I see that. As you turn that, that moves backwards and forwards, so that adjusts, and the chain must fit on there. Right, looks like we're going to learn this together. I think that goes on there. So all those people who know everything about these, you can laugh at me. That seems to go that way and then locks it in place, and I presume can go that way. It takes it further out and adjusts it and sort of locks it in place. I'll go back that way for now. Now this obviously is the chain. Now I think that's the way it goes. Right, this is the cover. It's sort of got a little latch bit here, so that seems to go under there and then onto there, and presumably you wind this on. So that winds on. Now it says here minus plus, so presumably that way takes tension off and that way puts tension on. And then once you think you've got the right tension on, that says sort of lock and unlock, so presumably you keep going with this until it's tight.